Good morning, guys. We're back on Motorsports Over Chai, and today we have with us Saman Jasani, Mihir Barve, and Rod with us. And here over to Rod for the news feed.
Hey, this is Rod. And before we get started, I just like to say one thing. We're recording on a Monday. So if any of us seem grumpy, we're just sorry beforehand. It's just a side effects of doing anything on a Monday. So let's just start off with IndyCar. And what a race it was, IndyCar last night at Road America. It was a proper roller coaster. And by saying it was roller coaster, I'm not alluding to the up and down nature of the circuit, but from last lap attrition to drama, everything was there. We have Alex Palou for Chip Ganassi Racing. He won the race. And the final two laps, where Joseph Newgarden of Team Penske faced a mechanical issue and had to and drop down the field. So just like two races before in the Detroit Grand Prix, Penske leads and then loses the lead due to a mechanical issue in the final couple laps, and then Chip Ganassi Racing wins. Apart from that, for the Formula One fans, Romain Grosjean was pulling off superstar moves in last night's IndyCar race. He looked like a proper veteran out there. It did not seem like he was a rookie and that was his first time on that circuit. He looked like a proper veteran pulling off superstar moves. And another interesting thing was that K-Mac, Kevin Magnussen, who was replacing Felix Rosenqvist for Aaron McLaren because Felix was injured from a previous race. Surprisingly, Kevin led the race for about 6 laps, which is, a huge thing for a person who has never even tested an Indy car and has never been at that circuit. He led the race for 6 laps. And keeping on with Roman Grosjean, oh, I just realized there's a lot of Roman Grosjean news this week. But after Roman Grosjean's that horrible accident at Bahrain, Mercedes AMG promised him a F1 test in their car during the French Grand Prix weekend, but that was actually cancelled due to travel restrictions. And then that was all there was in IndyCar. Then moving on to sports car,
Yeah,
Sabine
wait.
Schmitz.
So I wanted to add his test was actually cancelled because the French Grand Prix was moved to this weekend from last weekend. So actually, it was supposed to happen on last weekend, and the weekend before that was
Right.
Turkish Grand Prix. But because Turkish Grand Prix got cancelled because of travel restrictions, French Grand Prix was moved to this weekend, and a double header has been added to Austria. So next weekend we are going to Austria, and then again on the next weekend after that we will be racing in Austria. So that's why the French GP is actually clashing with the IndyCar calendar, and that's why he couldn't travel to France because he had to race in America as well.
Right, right. Okay. So this will be Austria and Styria, just like previous year.
Correct, yeah. So the layout of
Yeah,
the track will be the same. One of them will be named Austrian Grand Prix, and the other will be named Styrian Grand Prix, referring to the region where the track is.
Right. And given by how the race was last year, we should be looking forward to that both the Austrian and Styrian Grand Prix. But keeping on with what I was saying, DTM, the new generation, the new era of DTM, also was, I guess, debuted this week. The GT3 cars debuted at DTM at Monza, and the first race was won. Well, it was Monza, so keeping on with the Monza spirit, a Ferrari won. Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson is also racing in F2, if I'm right, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
he's
he is
racing in
having.
F2. He's
yeah,
already
yeah,
won
yeah.
a race in F2. I guess it was his debut race or something.
Yeah, it
Yes,
was
there
his
was
He
debut
won.
also,
race.
Yeah, he
yes, there
won
was
his
a
debut
brilliant
race in
thing.
F2. Now he's won a debut race in DTM as well. Brilliant stuff.
Yes, it's a
Even
brilliant
Alex
thing.
was there, na? Alex Albon.
Yes, Alex Albon, yes. Alex Albon and what was his name? Liam Lawson are the only ones fielding a Ferrari. Rest are all German brands and couple Lamborghinis.
Where did Arjun Mani finish?
I don't think he finished inside the points, right? Something for the
Yeah.
Indian fans. Indian driver for the first time is racing in DTM by the name of Arjun Maini. He is racing with the Mercedes AMG, and the
He
livery is
finished
just beautiful.
P14. He
Right,
finished P14.
right.
Right. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
I
He
didn't
did not
expect
have a
that,
great.
but then
Yeah, so he was not having a good race. The weekend was not going great for him. And in yesterday's race, there was two races in Monza, and yesterday's race, I think he had some issue. He actually retired. He like I think there was a mechanical issue after he went over the the gravels and stuff.
Oh,
So
okay.
anyway,
Yeah, I
the Indian,
saw him in P4 in the practice session, so I was really hoping that he could rack up some points this weekend, maybe. But yeah, I hope he steps it up in the next weekend, and I hope the reliability issues go away. Let's see.
yeah, I mean he's got a good car underneath him, so it's completely
True.
possible. But that's the thing about BOP, balance of performance. Every car is the same. Like it is different brands and everything, but still the performance wise, lap time wise, it's adjusted in a way that every performance of every car from every manufacturer is the same. So if you
Yep.
have to shine in a series that is BOP, you really need a lot of skill. So,
Yeah, and it's
fingers
so
crossed. I hope he
interesting
comes out on top.
considering that all the cars look so different, are designed so differently. The shapes are so different. I mean, if you see an AMG GT that Arjun Maini is racing in, it has a huge bonnet, whereas a Ferrari has probably one of the smallest bonnets that I've seen. Uh, so different kinds of sports cars, but they're tuned to match the speed of each other. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. That's what BOP does because every manufacturer produces their car in a different way. It has different horsepower and everything. So what BOP does is like levels out the field. Just I was mentioning this before. Sabine Smith, the late Sabine Smith's Nürburgring, the Nordschleifer Nürburgring track. The first corner of Nordschleifer was renamed to Sabine Schmidt's corner in her honor, which is just fantastic news
Yeah,
because
the queen of the ring,
yes,
as
the
she
yeah,
was
queen of the
yeah,
referred
ring.
yeah.
to.
Yeah. She
One of
passed
Uh,
away.
I wanted
She
to
passed
ask.
away recently.
So, Mihir, you want to take away the Formula 3 news?
Yes, of course. So this weekend, as if you guys have been following us on Instagram, you must have seen that we posted a post about support races, and Formula One is usually supported by either Formula Two or Formula Three or some regional race or W Series or something like that. And this weekend we saw Formula Three take on the French GP track along with Formula One. They had three races on the track of 20 laps each, and we saw some amazing overtaking moves on the racetrack, and drivers starting from 10th. I think Victor Martin started from 10th in the first race, finished second, and Alex Molia starting from 6th, finished first, which really puts things into perspective about how people were saying that Paul Ricard was not a good racetrack, especially after the 2019 French GP, which was a really boring race. I mean, I don't think I've seen a race worse than that. For the countless hours of watching Monaco, I don't think I've been this bored watching the 2019 French GP. But watching this year's Formula 3 races really gave me hope that the Formula 1 race was going to be good. And I guess we all know how that turned out. The second and the third race of the Formula 3 was also really great. I think the first race was more chaotic, and second race was a little more toned down, and all the drivers knew where they were going to take the risks and where they weren't. But the third race again was a little more chaotic because it was wet. The track was super wet, and there was no rain anymore, so it kept drying. So there was a lot of mistakes happening, a lot of drivers shining through the wet surfaces and the changing conditions. And it was just a great Formula 3 weekend all in all.
Yeah, great Formula 3 weekend for Arthur Leclerc as well. So he won race two, which was,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
he won race two, and he
he
started
started, he
30th.
started last. He started 30th, yeah, and he won,
Yeah,
which
he
is
started
pretty,
30th in the first race.
yeah.
He went up till 12th, So that was 18 moves, which is really a big number. And the person who finishes 12th in the first race gets the reverse grid pole for the second race. So he got the opportunity to start the second race in P1, and he made the most of it by winning the race. Again, in the third race, he had to start from 30th because of the qualifying, and he still made a lot of moves and finishing in P13. I think that was a combined of 25, 26 places gained, which is huge in a series where all the cars are almost similar.
I think even one race was won by Jack Doohan, right?
Yeah,
F3.
one race was on,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
yeah,
last race was
yeah.
won
That
by
was the
Jack.
last race. The changing
Yeah,
conditions.
he's the son of the great Mick Doohan, the MotoGP legend as well. So Mick Doohan, Jack Doohan. Interesting fact: Mick Doohan won his first MotoGP race on Honda at Paul Ricard, and his son did the same. So the Doohan name and
That's
the Paul
wonderful.
Ricard, that's a good record. And speaking of MotoGP, it was a great weekend. Of course, it was the German GP. Uh, Great race as usual in Moto3, which was won by Pedro Acosta. He is on fire from like first race. He's winning. He at one race he was starting from the pit lane, and then he came all the way up and he won the race. Then there was again a Moto2 race. The most memorable part about the Moto2 race was two Red Bull KTM guys were fighting in the front and they were leading. They were, I think, seconds ahead. And then Raul Fernandez just loses his front end because Remy Gardner was really fast in this weekend. He was just gaining. He was there. He was completely off. He just went. He was in super send mode. And speaking of super send, we were at German GP, and the king and the king of the ring, the eight-time world champion, and now the 11th time winner of the same track, Mark Marquez. Oh my God, he was back in business, boys. I mean, most of the people are saying he won with one hand because his right hand is still in a process of becoming, like, he's not fully fit, but yes. And oh my God,
He had
that,
fractured it, right? What had
yes.
happened? I
Yeah,
don't remember.
in 2020 on the first race he had a high side, and it was almost a career ending injury, but he recovered good. It took a year to recover, and we got a good season in 2020. We are getting a good season in 2021, but oh my God, Mark Marquez on first lap was super aggressive. So he just stick the bike at the right moment. So Miguel Oliveira was catching Mark Marquez in the later half of the race, and he was really catching. He was on the pace. He was on the groove. I think the gap was down to 1 second. I think in the second last or third last lap, but Mark Marquez had a response for that, and he just fired that Honda in the right moment, and the gap extended to 1.5, 1.6 in the end. And it was great to watch Mark Marquez. I'm not a Mark Marquez supporter. I'm die-hard Forza Valley clan. But it was good to see him back in business. It was good to see how good Mark Marquez is around that track. And it was a good race. Let's see if he continues that form of Honda and his form into next races, which is Dutch TT. And let's see how it goes. That's
Yeah,
it
I'm
for
sure
MotoGP news.
Honda wants to continue the form in Formula One for sure because they have been winning 3 races in a row now, and I guess they won a lot of other races this weekend too. Isn't that right, Rod?
Yes, that is a very interesting thing you just mentioned. Honda won in Formula One, in IndyCar,
MotoGP.
in MotoGP, and as well as in Super Formula, the Japanese Premier Open Wheeler Series. That is a very interesting stat. All the
So
major
it's
races,
all
all the major open wheeler and moto races was won by Honda or Honda powered
it's
engine.
it's all Honda weekend. It's a
It's
Honda
we are,
weekend. It was
the
a
Honda
Honda
Beat was
weekend.
activated this weekend.
Yeah, VTech kicks in.
VTech is kicking in every.
May, you mentioned a very interesting thing during the F3 days is that a lot of F1 fans complain about the Paul Ricard circuit. And
Yes.
I don't necessarily think that's the case. I don't think there's anything wrong with the circuit. I mean, if you watch any race, and I mean any race that takes place on that circuit, apart from Formula One, you will find yourself you will find the race to be pretty enjoyable. That's the weird part. So I don't think it's down to the circuit that makes the racing bad in Formula One. It's
To be
the
honest, the thing about Paul Ricard is that the corners over there are really flowing. Now they have
yeah,
a handful of straights where you can pass, and as we saw in Formula 3 last weekend, I mean, people gaining 25 places in two races, that's a huge amount in a spec series. Now, what happens in Formula 1 and why people don't like it or didn't like it, should I say, after yesterday's Grand Prix, uh, is that because the corners are so flowing, the high downforce cars of Formula One find it really hard to follow through them. And when by the time they are out of the corners, they are spaced out a bit, and they, I guess, they get closer to each other on the straights. But then again, there's a flowing corner where they have to back off, and we saw that with Alonso yesterday, uh, where Ricardo did a brilliant move on Alonso, and Alonso was so close to him that he had to back off, and otherwise he would have just slid right out of the corner. And since he backed out, Norris easily could have easily just passed him right after Ricardo did, and Ricardo took at least, I think, 6 or 7 laps to catch up and pass Alonso, whereas Norris could do it in 5 seconds or something, I guess.
yes, that's the
So
thing. F1 cars do not really like medium to high speed corners because of the aero wash. So I think that's something the fans should, and this is not a rant. That's what something the fans should keep in mind before complaining about the quality of race. There's nothing we can do or the organizers can do to make racing better, and
no,
that's
there
what the
is one thing that
2020.
they can do. They can change the cars to follow each other easily, which is happening
I mean, that's what
from next
2022
year.
hopes to
Yeah,
bring, right?
yeah, exactly. But jumping
And
on,
speaking,
before going on to there, let's first review the French GP that happened yesterday. And over to you, Gaurav.
absolutely.
Okay, so the race results of the French GP are that Max Verstappen finished first, behind, ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez in third, and Valtteri Bottas surprisingly finished in fourth with his tires not lasting perfectly to the end. And then we had the McLaren duo of Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo in fifth and sixth, and Pierre Gasly, the local Frenchman, finished in seventh, ahead of Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, and Lance Stroll. One of the great performances for me would be Daniel Ricciardo because he has been having a hard time keeping up with Lando Norris because of the move to McLaren, and he was not able to get to grips with the McLaren 35M. And this weekend he made quite a few overtakes. He started 10th and he finished 6th, which is really great. And the iconic overtake of Fernando Alonso, like he said, he was right behind him for 6 to 7 laps, and when he got the opportunity, he just dive bombed him like he used to do back in his Red Bull days. And I think we'll see Ricciardo coming back to life. And another interesting performance for me was Pierre Gasly because he had the pace all weekend, but then I thought that he'd finish ahead of the McLaren duo. But then the round of pit stops was so interesting that he fell back. And well, yeah, that's for Formula One.
One thing is that Mercedes swapped Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas' chassis before this weekend, and the
Mm, I, I,
reason,
I don't I don't think so that happened because when you swap a chassis, you have to actually swap the engine, the ERS, and all the major components, and it takes quite a lot of time to swap all the components. And I mean, I don't think that that could have
No,
happened
no, it did happen. And actually, if you
because
see,
and
if you have to transport a car from one racetrack to another, you have to strip it down to the bare bones. Even the nuts are out. So there's almost the 80,000 parts of a Formula One car are separated, not in 80,000 pieces, because obviously the engine's pistons doesn't have to be removed, but almost all of the parts are stripped down. And Mercedes did swap the chassis of Hamilton and Bottas. Now, the reasons that they gave behind these were interesting, and I don't think that they made any sense. Now, some people are saying that Bottas had a huge after Bottas had a huge crash in Imola, he swapped out his chassis for a new one, and he was doing actually really good in Monaco, whereas Hamilton wasn't. And Hamilton may have pushed to get Bottas's new chassis instead of his uh, personal one that he had used for maybe 4 more races, because it had low mileage on it. And since the new regulations demand teams to cut costs on almost every front, uh, teams can't make a lot of new chassis for the drivers because the chassis cost a lot. So some people are saying that Hamilton may have pushed for it. Some people are saying that because Bottas was lacking pace in Baku and some other races, they wanted to try out that if there was some issue with the chassis, and if this weekend if Hamilton was slow, then Bottas could have gotten a new chassis in place of his one. Uh, but reasons are unknown. But one thing's for sure is that they swapped the chassis, and it was in the official press release as well.
But it did not really matter for
Adding to the
Bottas, did
Monaco
it?
thing.
Yeah, it didn't matter in the end. Hamilton still beat Bottas with his chassis. So, but it was down to
But
the
then again,
strategy,
it
I
was,
guess.
yes, the strategy and the tire management.
True.
Bottas is
Yeah.
not really good with his tire management. He's been improving a lot since 2017, but still, it's nowhere close Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah,
But also the
speaking of tire
strategy,
I think this
management, I
time,
want to discuss about this weekend's winning strategy, because Red Bull really did a number on Mercedes when they pitted Verstappen again, and it was like a repeat of this year's Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona, when Mercedes gave Hamilton the additional pit stop after just a 14-15 lap stint on hards, which is really short for by any means. And Hamilton
right.
got on a fresh set of mediums and climbed through the order and overtook Verstappen, who had dead tires by the end of the race. And Red Bull did the same. And I think so when, of course, Verstappen, when he came in for his second stop, he was only a second or 1.5 seconds ahead of Hamilton actually. So if Hamilton would have pitted right in the next lap, Verstappen would have gained a couple of seconds on him anyway because of the much powerful undercut that was there on this track. So by the time Hamilton and Bottas, if they would have come into the pits, they would have been 3 to 5 seconds behind Verstappen, and then there wouldn't have been any chance of them catching up to Verstappen and then overtaking him. So I guess the only option they had left was just stay out and play out the one-stop strategy. Now, Red Bull knew that this was coming, so they pitted Perez really late, or rather way later than Hamilton and Bottas at least. And that's how Perez could execute the one-stop strategy way better than Mercedes, and he overtook Bottas because of this, and he was close to Hamilton as well. And given a few more laps, I guess he could have passed Hamilton, but that's would have been a different story. But yeah, Red Bull got 1 and 3 out of the bag, where everyone said that Mercedes would be back on a proper racetrack, as we saw in the last couple of street circuit races where the Red Bull car was dominating and Mercedes was nowhere close to the podium.
They were close to the podium in Baku, apart from that.
Yeah, but then they didn't finish close to the podium, was it? They didn't even finish. I think it was the first Hamilton's non-points finish in more than
54
5 years.
races.
The last time he finished outside top 10 was sometime in 2013, which is I mean, if you think, people say that he has had the best car and everything, of course, but still finishing in the points every single race over so many years of the turbo hybrid era, it takes something out of you, I'm sure.
One thing I would like to say, the on the one-stop strategy on the French, I really like the Aston Martin strategy. Oh my God,
Oh
they
yeah.
went very long, and I mean, I think both the cars are out of the points now. Both cars are in the points. I know there are 2 points or 1 point,
Oh
but
yeah.
both cars
Lance Stroll
ended it
started
in.
19th.
Vettel was out of points as well, and they went really
Yeah.
long. I mean, real long. They went for one stop, and
Yeah.
yes,
kind of
Stroll did 34 laps on hards and Vettel did 37 laps on hards.
they were good enough. I think out of 10, I would give them 9 because their strategy was on point as well.
Yeah, compared to the pace of the car on this particular racetrack, they finished way above the weight class, if you would say. I didn't see them finishing in the points at all, especially with one car in 19th. I maybe Vettel could have snatched the last point or something if a lot of crashes or something would have happened up front. But they just played the strategy game so well, and I think so did McLaren. I mean, when Norris pitted, he was saying that, oh, I'm behind Alonso and oh, I've dropped behind Raikkonen as well. And even the commentators, I guess, at a point said that Norris's strategy is screwed up and he's not going to probably finish in the points. And he just went on an overtaking spree after that, which we didn't see a lot of because we were so focused on Verstappen that we didn't keep our attention on Norris getting down to P11 and then climbing all the way up to P5 on that
Yeah,
brilliant
because it was
strategy.
not telecasted on the TV. It was down
Yeah,
to the
Yeah, I
watch
exactly.
mean,
screen.
Yeah, you could
that
see
was
his name pop up.
that was the battle that we wanted to watch, not
Yeah,
just
correct.
Verstappen and Hamilton all
Yeah,
the
and
way.
especially since Verstappen was say 5 seconds behind Hamilton, so it would have taken him quite a while to catch up to him anyway. So I guess the TV directors need to step up the game.
As
If
well.
you see Formula One's helicopter cameras recently, they have produced some incredible shots, and you
Yeah,
could say
yeah,
the
yeah.
skill of that helicopter pilot and the cameraman inside that chopper is exactly opposite of the race director because the race director
I
has been
if
doing
Yeah,
some
that's
crap.
true.
if you really want to see a good helicopter shot, watch Baku after the restart. The dance from the helicopter view, that
Oh
is
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah,
That
was
is
yeah, that
just
awesome.
was the synchronized dancing, like the way.
I think there is a video on
Um,
F1's official channel about the helicopter cam on how they do it. Yes.
But
You
on
guys
to
were
be
talking
very
a lot about strategies, like who did how brilliantly. We should mention Ferrari because
I
their
don't think so.
cars,
I don't think
yeah,
so. We should
exactly.
mention Ferrari.
We should mention Ferrari to just say how bad they did.
exactly. Carlos Sainz started fifth, ended up 11th. Charles
Hmm.
Leclerc started seventh, ended up something like 18th or something
16th,
like that.
yeah, I
16,
think he had to
16.
16.
take another extra pit stop because his tires were so bad and he was out of points anyway. So they decided instead of seeing his tire blow up like Verstappen's tire did in Baku, they should just pit and add salt
I
to
mean,
the
not
wound.
that it mattered, but
You know, when there was a TV camera guy, I mean the TV shot which showed Hamilton's, I think, right tire or left tire, I don't remember. It was really on the verge of blowing out. It was on like it was
like in
like
this Grand Prix,
95 gone.
in this
Hamilton's
race.
tire. Yeah, yeah, in this race, it was on the verge. We can really see the tire graining. I think in the last laps or before the pit stops, but I don't remember.
no, I
But it
guess
was
that
really tough.
that shot was somewhere around lap 46 or 47, because that's when actually the greening phase of his tires actually started to happen, and that's when he started to lose out chunks of time to Verstappen. And Verstappen was in fresher mediums, and he could just attack out of the corners. But whereas Hamilton had to stay a little bit more on the conservative side to secure the tires and just hold his position and not lose out to Verstappen. But eventually he did, of course, because Verstappen had more fresher tires and had more. I'd say Verstappen had a better car control this weekend because he was, I mean, excluding the first lap incident where he went off into turn one.
But I think that was down to the
Other than
wind.
that, he had,
Yeah, it was the wind.
yeah, that was due to the tailwind. Yeah, I mean, but he had great car control. I mean, if we saw the likes of the rookies make such a mistake, they would have gone spinning into turn one, and it would have been a disaster for them. But Verstappen had, like, Verstappen is more complete and more better prepared after
He
2019
kind
and
of backed out.
2020.
No, he has
Yeah, he
matured
backed
a
out,
lot.
and that's why. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He backed out, and that's why he could get back into P2. Otherwise, he would have been way down the field.
Yeah,
I
another thing
think
I want to add about Verstappen is that it's just how we have seen him mature over these years, like Rod just said. Uh, a couple of years ago, Verstappen would crash and he was a proper kid. But now you could see he lost P1 to Hamilton, who is definitely his biggest title rival, and he is still, I think, the favorite for the championship. But and of course his radio was not working. He had some issues with the radio. He couldn't communicate to the team. His mic had some issues. He could hear the team, but he couldn't say anything back. But he was so calm during the race, and in fact, when asked after the race that, oh, you lost P1 right at the start of the GP, did it make a big difference? He said, yeah, it was just a mistake, and we just reversed it. He didn't lose his head over it at all, or didn't think that, oh, I've lost the lead, or now I'm going to lose the race.
No,
No,
I think
he
the
kept
most
his head
memorable
down.
moment for Max Verstappen this year was during the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Oh
In the
yeah,
last couple laps,
yes,
he overtook Lewis on the outside. Now, I'm not going into the whole track limits thing. Let's just say it was legal. I mean, the race control was correct. He
yeah.
gave that possession back for a person who has. I mean, I've been watching Max Verstappen race since like 2016, 2017. That's not a thing. That's not a Max Verstappen thing. He does not give up position. He will argue about it. He will get angry about it. There was nothing. He just gave up that position. Like, okay, race control demands it. Okay, here you go.
Yeah, and
That
he
is
didn't cry about it.
mature.
He just said, "Yeah, we left the track. We made a mistake. I give the position back." If it was 2019 Verstappen, I think he would have just gone ahead and maybe gained
Finish
the
the
5
race.
seconds out of Hamilton and just taken the penalty instead of giving the position back. But he actually played the fair game. He gave his, I think it costed him about 14 points to give Hamilton the place back and not gain it again. Uh, that's quite a thing, and
I
still
think
not lose his head.
That's the thing about experience. Like 2016, like I remember Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel going for it at Spanish GP, and I remember Vettel losing his head
Was
over
it
the
Spanish or
fact that
Mexico?
does he want to play ping pong? No, that was Spain, and then another episode happened in Mexico as well.
There was
with
one in
And
Vettel,
I
China
mean,
as well.
over the years, yeah, I mean,
there was one in
over the years,
China, there was
you
one in
get
Mexico, there was one in Japan, there was another one, and the
yeah.
most famous one, Baku. How can we forget Baku?
When Vettel was
So
Oh
gone
Baku
yeah, with
miserably.
2018 was
Ricciardo.
Ricardo,
yeah
Oh
that
yeah.
was that was that was completely
Oh, right, 2018.
out of
Yeah.
the question. That I knew that they were gonna crash in the 2018 season, but I didn't expect it right after Ricardo's win in Monaco. And yeah,
we if you remember, I'll give you one I have read somewhere and seen interviews. Vettel always used to joke about how Helmut Marko was so much, you do this and you will lose this tense and you gain this thing. Helmut Marko had a very big impact on Vettel when he was in Red Bull, so he was their clear number one. Then Daniel Ricciardo there was their clear number one. So Max, learned from them, and then in 2019 he was their team leader, obviously. So he was learning. 2020 it was a good chance, but then the some reliability issues and the Italy curse was there with Max Verstappen. But in 2021 he is cool enough. He learned from his mistakes, and he's right now in the championship battle. He's, I think, leading the championship.
I had read an article a few months ago. It was about how Mad Max changed into matured Max, if you'd say. So back in 2018, 2019, when
Hey,
Verstappen
Mad
was,
Max or Mature Max, it's still Super Max.
It's still
yeah.
super Max.
But
You
back in
cannot.
2019, when Verstappen was nicknamed Crashtappen because he used to crash and he used to do all kinds of crazy stuff, uh, he used to be around his family and especially his dad a lot, who is obviously an ex Formula One driver and he has raced in almost 100 Grand Prix himself. So he had a huge influence on Max's driving style, and he obviously had taught Max all the basics and advanced level of racing. So what Helmut Marko did, Helmut Marko is obviously the driver manager of Red Bull and Alpha Tauri team. He manages the junior and the senior drivers. So what Helmut Marko did was he told the Verstappen family that if Max Verstappen wants to be in Red Bull, he needs to start staying away from his dad and start to listen what Marco is going to tell him. And in the next couple of years, you must have seen Verstappen's dad's presence on the track was reduced by huge amount. He used to be present in every race, and then suddenly he would be present in only a couple of races or something like that. And I think that has influenced Verstappen's driving style a lot. I think Red Bull has actually taken a huge amount of efforts in trying to convert Max into a more mature driver, because everyone knew he had the pace, but everyone knew he would just do something silly or stupid or crash or I don't know. But now he has stopped doing that and he has still retained the pace, and I think that is what has put him in title contention this year.
Yeah,
So
while
you're
we're
saying that so you're saying that we need to separate Stroll from his father in order for Stroll to win races.
No, no, no. I think Stroll should be more with Sebastian Vettel.
All right, so since we are already a little over time, let's move on to insights over chai. So what we have come up with is that each episode of our podcast will introduce maybe a racing driver or a MotoGP rider or a junior driver or a racing team to you guys, so that you'll know what exactly these drivers or riders have come through or how the team was formed, and you can actually relate to them a little better when you're watching the races. So over to you, Gorish.
okay, so this weekend I have the honor of introducing Daniel Ricciardo, my favorite driver, I'd say. And yeah, so Dan Ricciardo started out with Hispania Racing Team in 2011 at the British Grand Prix as as a part of his Red Bull team, and then he moved from Hispania Racing Team to Scuderia Toro Rosso for 2012 to 2013. And after 2013, I mean, he had a few great races and a few points finishes during his Toro Rosso stint. And after that, we just saw a new evolved and a faster version of Ricardo from 2014, where he got his first win at the Hungaroring and the Canadian GP. And I mean, Dan Ricardo has been one of the really strong drivers, I'd say. And Dan Ricardo was single-handedly running behind Mercedes in 2016 when Max Verstappen joined, and he had uh, little less experience than Dan Ricciardo, and he was single-handedly running behind Mercedes. And Mercedes, I guess, during the Malaysian Grand Prix, which Dan Ricciardo won, uh, which was really, really unexpected. And I mean, Lewis Hamilton's engine failure was unexpected, and his win was unexpected. And one of the greatest drives I'd say he has ever driven would be the 2018 Monaco GP, in which he had an engine failure and he could only use six gears. I mean, Monaco is a circuit where you don't require all the eight gears, only till seventh gear, I'd say. And he lost engine power and he kept Sebastian Vettel behind him for the remaining race from lap 28 to lap 71. He kept Sebastian Vettel behind and he went on to win the race. Was one of his best drives, and he's nicknamed the honey badger because the honey badger is an animal which, when woken up, is very fierce, otherwise has a very calm and charming attitude to the field. And yeah, I mean Honey Badger also because he is famous for his late dive bombing move and known as the last of the late breakers, and his Azerbaijan 2017 win, where he overtook three cars into after the restart into turn one. And yeah, that's all about Dan Ricciardo. And currently he's racing with McLaren Mercedes. Um, and yeah, I hope to see him win a world championship.
Yeah, and I think
So
he
that's
was
all about
nicknamed
Dan
last of
Ricciardo.
the late breakers because, I mean, for people who don't know much, every driver has their own set of braking points for every corners, and Ricardo just brakes so much later than other drivers. And how he achieves this has a lot to do with, of course, brake pedal control, and also the way he sets his car up. So when he was teammates with Verstappen in Red Bull, there were quite a lot of times where it was noticeable that Verstappen was running a slimmer rear wing, or just rather sleeker aerodynamic package than Ricciardo, who would choose beefier rear wings. And the reason behind that was that this would give him a lot of extra downforce to carry more speeds into the corners, and he could brake really late. So his driving style is more like he'll get into a slipstream behind you, he'll catch up to you, he'll come alongside you, and then he'll just outbreak you and just play with your head. And no matter what you do, go on the inside, go on the outside, or just defend, he's going to break later than you, and he's going to pass. And I think he started to show that in the McLaren from this weekend, because he's just about getting used to the car. He's joined McLaren this season itself, so it's a new car for him. And coming from Renault, which was a very different design philosophy, it has taken its toll on Ricardo's adaptability, especially since Renault and Red Bull's cars are designed on a similar philosophy, because Red Bull used to use Renault engines. So since the engine is same, the engine shape is the same, and then the car is designed around the engine. So, but now moving to McLaren that has a Mercedes engine, it has been a little different, but now he's starting to show his true colors.
Yeah, so another point that I have to add is his move on Kimi Raikkonen, where he was a long way back in
Yeah.
Monza, and he caught up to him, and he just braked so late. I mean, if if Kimi Raikkonen braked, let's say at 100 meters or 150 meters, Daniel Ricciardo would have gone those extra 50 meters, and then he would have braked, and he pushed him out wide into turn one of Monza, and that was one of the classical Ricciardo moves that we had ever seen.
So then over to you, Aman. You are going to introduce us a MotoGP rider as well.
Yes, so today I would like to introduce you guys and the other people who are listening or watching to us to Johan Zarco. Johan Zarco is the flying Frenchman, like he was the previous flying Frenchman. He started in 2009 with Aprilia in Moto 3. Then he had his highs in 2000. I think he won two Moto 2 championships. One year and then had a break and then next year, and now currently he's racing with Parmac Ducati and he's in the championship. I think he's second to Fabio Quartararo. One good thing, one fact about Johan Zarco is he is the only guy who has tested or ridden every manufacturer's bike. So in 2015 he tested with Suzuki, then he was with Yamaha, then he replaced someone in 1GP for Honda, then he was with KTM. He had a kind of a very Vettel Ferrari kind of a breakup with KTM. Then now in 2020 he was with sponsor racing Ducati, and then he had a promotion and now he's in Parmac Ducati. um, he's phenomenal. He has a good adaptability. He is good on tires, which is good. It's just a matter of time that we see Johan Zarco on the top step of the podium. He's been to P2s and P3s, and now he is very consistent in the championship. That's why he's second. And I think there's a matter of time that we see Johan Zarco doing a backflip, which is his signature celebration style, like everyone. I think I can expect Johan Zarco to win on a Red Bull ring or a fast where there is a long straight which Ducati can use the power and just fly off. So that's it for Johan, and I'm really favoring either Jack Miller or Johan Zarco for MotoGP title. So that's it.
All right, so Anish is here with us now. He was, of course, with us in the last episode, and he couldn't join us right at the top because he has his exams this and the next week. But he has joined us for the outro. and let's talk to him.
Hey everyone, how's it going? It's great to be back, even though I'm like shit tired after studying for practically till 4 in the morning and then waking up at 8 again. The next race is
The next race is the
Austria.
Austrian Grand Prix, and then we are racing on the same track again as a part of the Styrian Grand Prix because of the
Syrian, yeah.
COVID travel restrictions.
Even last year it happened, no?
Yeah,
Austrian
That was
Grand
a
Prix
season
followed by the
opener.
Syrian Grand Prix.
yes, it did.
I personally feel it to be a bit of a boring track.
You
I mean,
do?
there's a lot
I
of
actually
overtaking
like the track.
opportunity. Yes.
Yeah, but
It was
there's
actually quite you know, you remember last year, the very first race of the season in Austrian Grand Prix. Max had a very good start and then his car stalled right after turn two
oh yeah,
or
it
right
was
after turn one.
heartbreaking because I think he could have won that race because after that he had a drought of wins for a while, right until the British GP. Or was it the 70th anniversary GP at Silverstone?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he just played a huge game on Mercedes' strategy on that weekend, right? Just like uh, the French GP this weekend. But I genuinely think that Red Bull is going to be strong in the next couple of races because obviously they own the track, so they know the track inside out. And the fast flowing corners, the nature of the track, I think suits Red Bull more. Mercedes is a little better in slow speed corners, which kind of surprises me because they weren't that good in Monaco. But if you see the sector three times of Spanish Grand Prix, you could easily conclude that they were way faster in the slow speed corners than Red Bull, and Red Bull was faster in the high flowing corners, which makes them favorites for the next two races, I think. But of course, Mercedes is hurt after the last three races,
That is
and
true. That
how
is true.
yeah,
I,
so
I to some extent feel as if Mercedes does not have that good of a grip when it comes to your street circuits because the same thing happened in Azerbaijan, the same thing happened in Monaco, and had the Singapore GP conducted, I don't think it would have been a very pleasant sight for Toto Wolff or the runner-up championship for the eighth world champion. You know.
all right, then. I guess that's it for this week. It was a brilliant podcast, and it's wonderful to have you guys listen to us. And uh, keep checking our Instagram page for updates on upcoming races and the timings at which you can watch them. And Formula One's coming up next week, of course. And we hope that you guys watch the race and join us in the podcast after that. See you.